Welcome, everybody, to the X Factor podcast. Today, we're going to talk a lot today. And there is a lot to talk about. There was the NFL playoffs, and today we're going to be getting right into it with the NFL wildcard review, thoughts, opinions, anything you'd really think of at this point, because it was very, very wild, I could say. And first, we're going to get into it with the Cleveland Browns versus the Houston Texans, which a lot of people expecting Cleveland to go in there, be good as always. Defense has been solid. Offense has been very good with Joe Flacco under the helm. And, well, first quarter, they started out 7-3. Houston gets it up. They're up. And then it's 14-17. Joe Flacco throws 2 pick sixes in a row, and next thing you know, they're up 38-31. And that was just pretty much over from that. As of for this season, Joe Flacco obviously played his last game in an NFL field because he is retiring after the season. Cleveland just couldn't get really nothing going after half. Well, after they went 14-17, they just really couldn't get nothing going. After the 2 pick sixes, it was just pretty much over after that. As of for Houston, C.J. Stroud easily is Rookie of the Year. No one can really tell me otherwise. He has came in and become the pure number one guy on a team that barely won 3 games last year. He comes out in his playoff debut, 16 for 21, 274, 3 touchdowns. Very good game. Devin Singletary has been outstanding since the injury to Dameon Pierce. He had a good game, 13 rushes, 66 yards, and a touchdown. And we also got to talk about someone that no one really talks about is Nico Collins. I believe he was a later round pick a couple years ago, and he is just became easily the best receiver on that team. And he has been able to show week in and week out why he could be the best receiver in the NFL. So I feel like once we get into more next season, people are going to know who he really is, and he's going to be talked about a lot more. Other than that, it was just a very big blown out game from Cleveland, or from Houston. They go out really high, really strong. DeMeco Ryans, easily in my opinion, is Coach of the Year, and I don't think it should even be debatable. He is Coach of the Year. He turned a 3-14 team to a 10-7 team and won a playoff game. And now he's going on the next round to play Baltimore. And if a lot of you guys know, who did Baltimore play in C.J. Stroud's who did C.J. Stroud play in his debut? It was Baltimore. So now they have a chance to win their game back, go to the NFC Championship game or AFC Championship game, and either play Kansas City or Buffalo. Going on to another game, Miami and Kansas City. And a lot of expectations coming from each side, as both have been struggling on their own side of things. Kansas City has been struggling with the ball control a lot. Offense has not been the best. Has not been the same as the previous years. And what we saw from Kansas City this year is what, in my opinion, we would have thought was last year when they won the Super Bowl. And let's say they come out and they underplayed this whole season. They come out and they play against Miami, where Miami, they had a struggle with a lot of things. They couldn't really get anything done with playoff caliber teams. And as we know it happens again. Miami just struggles another one against Kansas City, and they get blown out. And it was very cold. It was a very cold game. But they kind of let this on by its own. And yes, you could blame a lot on the weather, but there's been some balls that Tua could have thrown that were should have been right on the money. There has been some balls that could have been caught that were right on the money, or that should have been on the money. And you can tell when and you can tell every loss that Tyreek Hill has had this year, or they've had this year. Tyreek Hill has not had over 100 receiving yards. So if Tyreek Hill can get 100 receiving yards for you, you ain't winning a game. And he had 62. So did not play as expectations you probably thought going back into your home turf, and they just struggled. As of for Kansas City, this is easily the best defense I have seen from Kansas City in Mahomes' time. This is probably the best defense that Andy Reid has had since the Eagles era, in my opinion. And I'm probably thinking about those Super Bowl Eagles that went on to lose to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But other than that, the defense, very strong, very good. As for the offense, if you can get going, if you can do something like this to Miami, and you can do the same thing to Buffalo next week, or to C.J. Stroud and that Texans team, or to Baltimore, and then whoever's in the NFC side. If you could do that every week, you're winning the Super Bowl. You're going back-to-back for the first time in, 20 years maybe? So, with Kansas City, I think they can, they're running the table. They can run the table and run right through it, but when you're talking about the two other teams, they should be worried about Baltimore and Buffalo, who obviously Baltimore had their bye week, and Buffalo, who beat them already. The one thing is with that game, they were one penalty away from winning that game. They could have won the game if it wasn't for that penalty. And, well, as it told, they did not win the game. And they're going, for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' playoff career, outside of Super Bowls, he has to go into a cold Buffalo weather area. And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes has been through cold weather before, but Buffalo weather is just way different than Kansas City weather. I will tell you that very much. And when you got to go into those rowdy fans of Buffalo, you're going to get something. We've seen it with George Pickens and the Bills fans today, or yesterday, I might say. It's going to be a very struggle for me. I think the Chiefs will struggle, but I feel like once overtime they will get going. But for me, you can't bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if they can get going, they're going to be unstoppable for the rest of this playoff run. We're going to skip over a couple of games here, and we're going to talk about the Rams and Lions. Rams-Lions, of course, they came in with a huge storyline. You probably thought WWE or whatever wrestling was scripting this shit, because they came in with a good storyline here with Jared Goff against his old team and Matthew Stafford going back to his home turf where he spent 12 good years, or 10 or 11 good years there. And, well, let me tell you, they did not surprise. They came out and had a very good game. This was the only close game of the playoff weekend. Detroit, they go out, they start out 14-3. They slowed down after a while. And the only thing that really could have beaten them was the one field goal that they had is what Detroit had to beat LA. I will get to a couple things. Detroit, first off, has won their first playoff game in 30-some years. That was incredible. And what really made the whole thing even more impactful was showing an NFL fan who has been a season ticket holder for 66 years sitting in the stands. That was perfect, because that man, they even said he was there for their first championship in the 50s. And he get to see their only 2 playoff wins. That is something to really enjoy about as a fan. Stuff like that night with Detroit is what every fan wants to see. And I'm not saying lose every year for 30 years and then win your playoff game like, oh, thank God. But that was just to show a happiness, because you've seen multiple years. You've seen this team go 0-16. And when you talk about cursed teams, 2 of teams come to mind. Detroit and Cleveland. Cleveland, their curse continues. Detroit is trying to come and get into a conference championship. And I feel like they can do it. But we need one thing to talk about. Puka Nacua, there was a third down play at the end of the game where Puka Nacua came up, tried to catch a pass, but got a holding call. Well, it was no call at all, I might add. And no one called it. And I want to say this for Detroit fans. That was your one thing from winning. The defense still had a chance to get back. They didn't. But if that holding call was called, we could be seeing a different game right now. We could be seeing Detroit or LA versus Tampa Bay next week. That's something to think about. So when Detroit fans say it's refs versus Lions, or because of the Cowboys game a couple weeks ago, think of this moment right here. Without that call, you probably ain't winning your first playoff game in 30 years. But I'm not going to take that away from you. They still came out. They still won. They still held them to that final grasp. Defense did not have enough to win it. As for Matthew Stafford, it might be time to think about some retirement. And it could be wild, but Tyler Higbee also had... he's had some talent. And I want to talk about Tyler Higbee for a second, who had a very dirty hit at the end of the game the other night. And, well, it looked very disgusting. Come out, he torn his ACL. He'll be out. Well, the season's already over for him, but he's going to be out indefinitely, especially for probably the first part of next year. And when you look at this LA team, you have a good young head coach and Sean McVay, who's 37, I believe, at this point. He's going to be coaching for that team for the next 30-some years, if he still wants to, or if he still wants to coach. He is one of the few young coaches to make it this long and do what he's done. Nobody has really been able to do that. Be a head coach that young and pretty much lead them the way he has. He's only had one losing season in his tenure with the Rams, and that was last season. When the whole last season they dealt with injuries. And they dealt with injuries this year with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, but they still got their way to get in. And if you think, a couple years ago they said, fuck draft picks, we're going to get these stars and come out. This year, they relied on their draft picks. Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, who have been all-stars, in my opinion. They have been playing lights out all year. And Puka Nacua is one of the people that you're going to be talking about for the next couple of years, because he came out, 9 catches, 181 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. And he outplayed Cooper Kupp, who had 9 targets for 5 catches, 27 yards. So, when you look at both sides of the tape here, you're going to be looking for some good stuff here for the next couple of years. So, if Matthew Stafford retires, yes, you'll have to find a quarterback as good as Matthew Stafford to help these players grow and get old and get going. But, on the other hand, Matthew Stafford, he can go into next year knowing that these guys are there and say, let's try to win one. Let's try to win another one. We almost beat Detroit, and I honestly, I think LA would have gone into Tampa Bay and would beat Tampa Bay. I really think they would. And as of for beating the 49ers, they have in the playoffs before, but this 49er team is just way different. So it'd be a very toss-up of what would happen. So that concludes for Detroit and Rams. I will get on with Buffalo and Pittsburgh, where in my opinion it was really not really a contest. It was just 21-0 right out of the gate, and it was just they came back. They just didn't have enough to win it. And yes, there was a call at the end of another call at the end of the game where it could have for a hold that George Pickens was wanting, and you can't really blame that because, in my opinion, I don't think Buffalo, if they would have scored there, I think Buffalo would have just got the first down and won the game. But you have to give credit to Mike Tomlin. He is tried to find his number one guy since since Ben Roethlisberger retired, and it doesn't look like Kenny Pickett's the one. I will say that right now. I don't think Kenny Pickett will be the one. He didn't play in the playoff game, and he's not very that good. Let's be honest here. You can't blame offensive coordinators. He got his offensive coordinator fired for how his play was. Mason Rudolph came in, 22 for 39. That's not really that great, but he had 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Like, you can't really. Mason Rudolph, in my opinion, has outplayed Kenny Pickett. But in my opinion, you have to sit there and think: is Kenny Pickett your guy? You would need a lot of convincing to think that would happen. But also another storyline broke out. Thanks some post conference stuff. Mike Tomlin walked out on a question, and the question pretty much the girl started out saying about his last year of his contract will be next year. So you sit there and think, what? And then he walks out. I will tell you that he walked out, and then again, it just caused for another meme to happen on Twitter, of course. For me, Mike Tomlin, he has been easily the best coach. One of the best coaches. He is second best coach of all time for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has really helped this team. He has gone 17, 16 years having a winning record. When his winning record's on the line, that team balls out and wins games. And then, of course, the playoff hits and nothing happens. This team is getting older. This team is... the talent there, you have some young talent there. But without your quarterback, you ain't doing nothing. And if I was Pittsburgh, I would be looking into a quarterback this year. You got Caleb Williams coming in. You got J.J. McCarthy coming in. You got Drake May coming in. Those are 3 quarterbacks to look forward to right there. And in my opinion... and then you also got Michael Penix, who just went to a national championship. You have J.J. McCarthy, who won a national championship, coming in. So, if I was Mike Tomlin, I would go to the owner. I would say, okay. I would say this. I would say, give me another year. Give me another, make this right. You go out, you trade for a quarterback. Boom. There's your start. You get an offensive coordinator who is a reliable offensive coordinator that has really helped through the past. And one of them comes to mind is Bill O'Brien. He was offensive coordinator for Patriots last season. Even though it didn't look great, I still feel like he could go in and help this Steelers team. Hell, he won a couple playoff games. He won 3 playoff games, or not 3. He won a couple playoff games for Houston in his time. I feel like he comes in, he helps Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, whoever comes in and takes that spot, and you try to win a Super Bowl. Pittsburgh, of course, has won 6 Super Bowls. New England's won 6 their side. They're trying to tie. They're trying to, get going here. You need to show who can really be at the top of all times, and show why. Pretty much, who's top of the mountain for everything. So Mike Tomlin, I would do that. Get a stud quarterback. Boom. And if you don't, who knows? He could walk away. And if he walks away, that's a huge, huge thing for every team that needs a head coach. So that's something to really think about. But yeah, we're going to get right into it here with the next thing. Alright, so now we're going to get into it. And one more thing, we got to talk about the Bills. Had a great playoff game. Now they have to go on and play the Chiefs, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. And so we're getting right to the next thing now. Sorry, off the hook here. We need to talk about some potential 2 fraud teams I will talk about here now. And the first one will be the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Philadelphia, 10-1, proceeds to go out and go 10-6 or 11-6. And their one playoff game was against the New York Giants on Christmas, which you would argue that they were gifted that one by refs. And they come out and lose 32-9 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, let's go into it right here. We're going to talk about the Eagles. Last year, I said that this was that last year's team was the most disappointing loss, the most disappointing team since the 07 Patriots team. They had so much talent, so much good stuff into it, they lost. Okay. Go into it, you're 10-1. Everyone's feeling high. Everyone's feeling good. You go out, you lose multiple games straight. You win one, you get gifted one by refs to the Lions, or not to the Lions, to New York. You go out, you lose to the Giants, and then you lose to the Cardinals. Okay, those are huge. And you go out and then you lose to Tampa Bay, who you beat earlier in the year in that same game, or in that same turf, where you beat the hand of them good time. And I think this was a real downfall. This is the Philadelphia team that I said was a long time ago. This was the Philadelphia team that I thought that they were a long time ago. They were underprepared. They were not ready for the standard. There was too much pressure on them. And this game really showed Jalen Hurts' quarterback play as a quarterback. 25 for 35, 250, 1 touchdown. Okay. That's some good stats, but when you see the score is 32-9, not really that good. DeAndre Swift, they couldn't get the running game going. They had 15 carries between all runners, 42 yards. Devontae Smith played great. 8 catches, 148, didn't really happen. Oh, and then you look, where's A.J. Brown? I don't think even A.J. did he even show up to play? Like, was there even anything for him? A.J. Brown has really fallen off since week 10. Since the 49ers game, he has fell off a cliff. And you could sit there and say there's no problems between Jalen and AJ, or there's no problems with AJ's, but it sure does look like it. You went 10-6. You thought you were gonna get a first round win. Boom, you lose to the Buccaneers. And you gotta sit there and look about how good your team was, how much potential you had in this team, and you go out and you show your true colors in front of millions of people, and and it also proves about the tush push too. The tush push, without the tush push, where is this team right now? I think I did a statistic a long time ago. They would have had 6 wins and 11 losses if they didn't have the tush push, and they're gonna ban it. So you guys sit there and think, what is this team capable of next year? Because if you look at me, you have notable free agents right here in this offseason. Fletcher Cox in his 30s. Brandon Graham also in his 30s. DeAndre Swift, who played outstanding this year. Quez Watkins. Zach Cunningham. Shaquille Leonard, who underperformed. Bradley Roby. Boston Scott, Marcus Mariota, Julio Jones, Jack Driscoll, Rashad Penny, multiple. And, of course, the big one, Jason Kelsey on his future with the Eagles. Hell, you want to bring up another future, Lane Johnson's also probably up there, and knowing his injury history over the last couple of years. And I feel like this year is the year where Jason finally retires. You can just see it in his body tone. It's just that's just where it is for him. You could see in the end of this game tonight, or last night, it was done for him. He is finally chosen his moment to retire. So there goes your moment for you then. It's really disappointing for the Philadelphia Eagles fan bases and disappointing for Philly. And as for Tampa Bay, I thought they looked great. I thought they looked like one of the best teams in the NFL with that game. Baker Mayfield. They have found their quarterback in the future. They have found their quarterback. A quarterback that Cleveland could have had. is going on to the next round where Cleveland sits out with their $280 million quarterback that they creamed about when they traded for him. There's one to think about right there. And I even said it, getting rid of Baker was the worst thing you could have done, because this is the potential Baker really has right here. What we've seen from that tonight was what Baker's potential is truly fulfilled with. And now he has to go on into the divisional round against Detroit. So, if he can get on to the NFC Championship game, that's really going to show how much Cleveland is messed up. And it's not even... This is more of a coaching issue and a GM issue than it is anything. Because Kevin Stefanski, whatever you fucking call him, let him go. He let him play hurt to show and let him not play well. So you can have an excuse to get rid of him. And this is what's your result. To me, I think that's just bad on the whole organization. Speaking of another bad organization right here, we're going to talk, and the reason I let this one go on last, because if you guys know me, or if you guys have watched this show, I am a Cowboys fan. And I'm not going to sit up here and make any, well, actually, I can't really say an excuse, because every time you lose, there is always an excuse for something, on why this happened, why something happened. I'm going to be non-biased on this one. Total non-biased. I've been non-biased with all of them this year. I'm going to be truthful with this one. This team, overall. First, I'm going to talk about Green Bay. They have found their Hall of Fame quarterback. Jordan Love proved the other night, that he is a playoff quarterback. He is their Aron Rodgers right now. And knowing that they have found their third one scares a lot of people. And now they have a chance to go on and try to upset the number one seed. And with how young this team is, and knowing that there's nothing to lose, there is a chance. There's a big chance. San Francisco messes up one time, they're going to be screwed. This is how good this team is. And I'm going to talk about Dallas right now, because this was the most embarrassing, shocking, biggest loss in franchise history. You go out there, you win 12 games, you win the second seed, you get some good quality wins towards the end. And easily this is the best team since the 90s, arguably. All year they showed that they were the best team since the 90s. This was their best year. They go out and shit the bed. They literally shit the bed on national television. And there could be there's blames to go. You could point fingers at everybody for this one. But if you want to point fingers at a lot of people, Dak Prescott's not the main one you could look at right here for this one. A lot of them, you could probably sit there and say, yeah, Dak Prescott maybe could have done something to change this game for us. But when your defense lets up 48 points, you can't blame that on quarterback play. You can blame the 2 interceptions, you can blame the pick six, because if you had the pick six, all that leads down to is a 41-32 game. If you take both of those out, you have a sustainable joint to go. But when you have had one of the best defenses all year, and you go out and you don't let up any punts, you don't get any sacks, you don't get any... Well, I think they had one sack, but you don't get anything really going on defense. That one's on Dan Quinn. That one's on the defense, 100%. Micah did not play to the stance you could probably thought he would. If you were anybody, you probably would have thought that this team could have came out and blown them out like they always done in home games. but it was just not how that was. The defense did not show up. Offense did not show up in the first half. Dak Prescott and that offense started going in the end of that game, which was too late for them to even do. The stats even show it too. He still came up with 3 touchdowns. And if you look at the stats, you probably thought they would have won. And he didn't. And Dak has had this was easily his best year of his career. And this is what they show on national television. Now, this is the thing. What do? What do you go on from here? First, you get rid of Mike McCarthy. And this is just true feelings happening. And in the 3 years, 12 wins for the past 3 years, they're the first team to do that and never make a conference championship. They lost to the wild card 2 years, and they lost in the divisional last year. And the weird thing is, when you know when this team comes unprepared, the first or second drive of the game, if they're not playing super well, or if they're not looking good, they're looking like they're not tackling well, they're not doing this well, then you come unprepared. You know when they come prepared, 1 or 2 drives into the game. That's not fully on players. That's mostly on coaches. That's Mike McCarthy's fault right there. You look at his time management skills, not great. Play calling, I don't know what the play calling was, because there were so many audible calls, like the kill. There's a bunch of other things happening. You've never seen that. The only time you've ever seen those were when they lost games. That's how you know they were trying something and it didn't fucking work, or they were trying to change something up that you knew probably wouldn't work in the first place. And it's really on Mike McCarthy on this one right here. Your team came unprepared. And Jerry Jones is probably fucking losing his mind over it. Now, who do you look at as head coach? You look at Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick would not let this team score 48 points. This team, Micah Parsons would have had 3 sacks. Deron Bland wouldn't have let up so many plays. Stephon Gilmore wouldn't have let so many plays. And that also goes on defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. He needs to go. In my opinion, that was the worst game he's ever called in my career. Or in his career. In Dallas. And it was just awful. You could tell that teams are now knowing what this defense is. You punch them in the throat, they're not going to tackle. The tackling in this game, this is what you get from Jason Garrett. This is what you get in the 2010 Dallas era. You get shitty tackles, you get non-physical, and you fuck up games. And what did I say a couple weeks ago? I said if Dallas was going to win the Super Bowl, they need to be physical. They need to smack them in the head first. They need to punch them right away. They didn't do that. They lost the game. As for someone who's been watching this team, who's been a fan of them for almost 10 years now, I know when this team's going to lose, and I know when this team's going to win. You can look off the first couple of drives, you can say, okay, this is what the game's going to look like. That's how predictable it is now. And you need something or someone to come in there and change the whole attitude of this team. First thing, Mike Parsons, for the love of God, needs to shush about everything. You get smacked in the mouth by San Francisco. You still talk. I don't even want to know what he has to say after this one. Because this was utterly awful. The only thing you can do is shut up and go into next year and prove something. You are what you are until you're not. And what this team is overhyped and overrated. Major. overrated, overlooked, or not overlooked. Anything that you could define overrated, frauds, anything. This is what it is. You are what you are until you're not. And this team really, really upset a lot of fans. And it was so bad that not even media people can make fun of this one as bad. Because it was that bad. Like I said, if there was Bill Belichick there, this would not have happened. This team would have been disciplined, ready to go. And also, and another thing about discipline, they've led on penalties for a couple of years now. They've been up there on the penalty list. Discipline, defense, discipline. You had 54 defensive plays. You had 48 of them with 6 defensive backs sitting in the backfield. You didn't even try to stop the run. You were getting run down your throat, and you just let it happen. That's on coaches. So, if I was Jerry Jones, I'd look at the team. I would extend Dak. He had his best year of his career. He can prove that he can do something. He needs to prove he can win the playoffs, though. He needs to prove that. I would extend CeeDee Lamb. He has proven that he can be a number 1 receiver. I would try to somehow get Micah. Because if you're going to get rid of Dan Quinn, it's going to be very hard to convince Micah Parsons to stay with it. But if you have Bill Belichick on the other side, guess what? He's going to sit there and tell him, I've coached Lawrence Taylor. You're about as good as it gets when it comes to Lawrence Taylor. You need to get bigger, you need to get faster, you need to get stronger. Boom. Just like that, you try to convince him like that, he could probably stay for an extension. You need to keep Tyron Smith coming, but you need to draft a tackle to be consistently good when he's out. You need to keep Brandon Cooks. The way Michael Gallup played too, I would like to keep him too around because he proved even when you need him the most, he'll be there for you. And for defense, there's a lot of fixes. You need linebackers. Linebackers, major. You need defensive backs, major. You don't get those, you don't do any of that, I don't see this team going back to the playoffs next year. And if people who wants Dak out, I want to know what their solution is to replacing Dak Prescott as our quarterback. Because if you get rid of Dak, you could be talking about another 10 years of no playoffs. You don't want to live through that. You want to live through the years where you can see your team go into the playoffs and win championships. And Dak has not done that. But if you can get a coach who is disciplined, if you can get a coach who's not going to take no shit, and who's not an ass kisser, that team's going to win a Super Bowl. All of the coaches that Dallas has had since Jimmy Johnson have done nothing but ass, except for Bill Parcells, all of them have been ass kissers. They don't show enough physicality. They don't show that you want to kill someone instincts. They're in there saying, oh, nice, clap, clap, stuff. Let's be friends. You're not friends until you win championships. This team needs a lot of thinking about over the next offseason. Because if you want to go back and win a championship, this team needs to be different. This team needs to go in there and destroy teams every week. Even when you play winning teams, go out there and destroy them. And yes, they played good against some winning teams this year. The only 2 that they didn't play was against Buffalo and San Francisco. Those were the only 2 games where they came in and sucked. They were unprepared. And you go into next year and you go, look, this is what we do. Boom, we're going to do it. And if you're not going to play good, we're going to get rid of you. You need to put pressure on everybody. See what they're like under the pressure. We've seen how it was this game when you're under pressure. It don't look good. You need to put them under fire. Where there's no way of getting out. You have to solve your own way of getting out of there. You throw them into the fire. See what they do. And that's really what you go off from here, because it was just flatly embarrassing. So, that's all I got for you guys today. we'll get into a couple other stuff over the week. But stay tuned for the next one later.